Thank you for the intro, John. I hope that everyone can hear me. So hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and really happy to see that so many of you have found the time to learn a little bit of something about LinkedIn. My name is Anna, and I'm a career advisor and LinkedIn trainer. So what I do every day is I work with professionals who are unhappy with their work situation and they want to change something, either find a better job or get promoted in the company they're currently at. So they are proactively looking for better opportunities out there. But as you all may know, because we've all been in a situation where it's not that easy to always figure out the best and the most effective way to get to the goal that you have in mind. So I help them get there. And I'm really excited to be talking about LinkedIn specifically because it happens to be my jam. It happens to be the area of specialty that I hold in a very special regard because LinkedIn had a very special, played a very special role in my story of how I grew my business and how I became who I am today, but also it plays such a huge part in my work with literally every single client on a daily basis. So today I'm super excited to help you guys also master the real tricks. So not the hypothetical tips, not the tips that you've already read many times, but we're going to be talking about the real stuff going on LinkedIn and the real things that you can start implementing right away. But before we get there, I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about LinkedIn in the first place. And that happens to be also the reason why you should trust my advice as the person who can teach you a little something about LinkedIn. Unlike a lot of general advice out there, I'm not only talking the talk, but I've also been walking the walk. Just like many people who I work with on a daily basis, I used to be on LinkedIn, but not quite use LinkedIn. What do I mean by that? Really, what was going on is I used to have my profile up. It was completed. It had all the sections. There was some text written on there, but basically it was my online resume. And I had no idea what else to do with that. So I basically just put that profile out there and was hoping for the best. But then in the end of 2016 or beginning of 2017, I decided to start my own business, the career coaching business, the resume writing business. And I realized that, wait a minute, I know nothing about LinkedIn. What's going on there? So I went on LinkedIn and that's how my journey began. It began with me thinking, well, there is an option to start sharing some content here. There is an option to meet some great people. There is an option to learn and grow and really gain a lot of useful things that will help me develop in this industry or in this particular business. And so since that time, which basically was not that long ago, I have learned so much. Obviously, it was not always an easy road. There were some challenges and roadblocks and hurdles, I'm not going to lie. So it took a lot of trial and error to get to where I am today. So my goal for today is to help you save all of that time that it took me to learn all of those things and really start implementing them right away. So again, LinkedIn played a very special role in my journey because I use LinkedIn for so many different things, including growing my business and making a living, which, let's face it, is a very important thing. So I literally use LinkedIn as the main channel for building my business from the ground up. And I use it as not only a promotional platform, but for attracting new business, but also as a learning platform. And it has very quickly become my main resource for my own professional development. So I myself was very much surprised at how much I started getting out of LinkedIn when I really started to understand what this platform is like and everything that this platform has to offer. Also, LinkedIn gave me an opportunity to join the thought leadership community in my industry. And I'm proud to say that in a way, I also had some influence on it. Not a huge one, but at the end of the day, I truly joined this awesome community of people who are like-minded, who are truly the leaders in that field. They are driving innovation. They are driving new ideas. They are out there and they're doing a lot of things similar to what I love. And that provided me with so much support and so many additional resources that I cannot even list all of them today. Also, I use LinkedIn to grow my personal brand, which, is also an important part for pretty much any person, not only if you're running your own business, but let's face it, in the digital reality of today, if you don't have a personal brand, you are missing out. So basically, when it comes to personal branding, I learned the concept through LinkedIn. And once I mastered the fundamentals of that, I also started helping other professionals who are experienced and highly qualified in their own professions, in their own industry. Some of them are high-level top executives. And I started helping them to gain visibility in their industries and keep up with those social trends that started dominating LinkedIn quite recently. Also, LinkedIn gave me an opportunity to build a community, which was huge because at the time I had just moved to a new country. I didn't know anybody. I chose a brand new profession that I knew very little about. So back then, having a community was very, very important. So since then, I was able to build a community of over 63,000 followers, which is awesome. And it's still, it's always in the works. And I'm not truly on LinkedIn for the numbers' sake, but having such a community inspires me every single day. And I get to meet so many people on a daily basis. Also, as I said before, establishing my professional network. That was another amazing thing that I gained out of LinkedIn exclusively. So like I said, I use LinkedIn as my main channel to establish professional contacts, to meet new people, to understand what's going on in the world of job search, in the world of hiring, and learn so much by connecting with like-minded and not so like-minded people as well. But anyways, the people who have the expertise that I want, that I need, that inspires me, and that also helps me to push forward. And of course, all of that combined gave me an opportunity to land clients, land multiple speaking gigs, job offers, and features in different media, Forbes, and others included. None of that would have happened to me if I hadn't chosen LinkedIn to be my go-to platform. That's why I truly believe that LinkedIn has so much to offer. And unlike so many other platforms out there, it's very underutilized still. So there is so much potential, and it's just right there waiting for you to be leveraged and to be utilized for your own professional growth and your success, which I think is amazing. So I hope that, if nothing else, I hope that after today you walk away with the idea that if this girl could do it, so can I. Maybe LinkedIn is my new go-to platform where I will enjoy spending a lot of time, where I'm gonna gain so much out of it, and that will truly help me to achieve whatever goal I have in mind professionally and job search related. So in today's presentation, we'll be focusing on 3 main outcomes. I don't want to overwhelm you with so much information because, trust me, I work with job seekers every day. I know there is so much information out there. Sometimes it overwhelms me, and I work in the space. So I cannot even imagine how you must be feeling when you realize that there's this advice and there's that advice. Sometimes those pieces of advice are totally conflicting and contradicting each other. And how the heck are you supposed to sort through all of that stuff? So today we're going to be focusing on just 3 main outcomes. 1, how to improve your profile, because trust me, no matter how much or how little care you've taken of your profile up to so far, there is more that can be done. There is still unrealized potential out there. I can absolutely guarantee that. 2, we'll focus on how to help you appear more often in recruiters' searches. Because obviously all of us would love to be in a scenario where you wake up in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you log onto LinkedIn casually, and here they are. All of those messages from recruiters who are interested, who are motivated, who want you, and they want to talk to you about relevant career opportunities that they had in mind. Wouldn't that be amazing? Even though reality is obviously very far from that, for some of you a little bit further than for others, but anyways, we have to set realistic expectations. But I do believe that you can generate a ton of opportunities, a ton of leads for yourself if you know how to create opportunities with the help of LinkedIn. And finally, our 3rd item to focus on is how to convert those wonderful views and search appearances that you might get into real opportunities. Because getting views or getting exposure is one thing, and that's great, that's amazing. But if it's just views, then what's that worth? You want to definitely make sure that that somehow converts into opportunities, into real progress, into real success. So if you're ready, if you're as excited as I am, let's grab a glass of water or a cup of coffee. For some of you, even maybe a glass of wine. I mean, hey, I'm not going to judge. Quite the opposite. I love the enthusiasm. And let's get started. So today, I want to tell you about my client, George. So when George came to me a couple months ago, here's where he was at. He was job searching for 6 months at this point. So he was already getting really frustrated because his job search has been dragging on and on and on. And he was realizing that something must have been wrong. When I looked at his LinkedIn profile, it pretty much looked like a copy of his resume, more or less. Certain portions or certain sections literally copied word for word from his resume, I could tell. When I asked him, how do you use LinkedIn, or what do you do on LinkedIn every day? He said, well, I use LinkedIn to mainly find relevant job postings. Sometimes I hit apply. And another thing sometimes I do is I message the recruiter who is in charge of that posting. Because as you know, on LinkedIn, if you find a job opportunity or a job posting that is published and available for everybody to see, you can usually see the person who published or who is managing this job opportunity. So he would message those people casually every once in a while. When we started talking about his actual results, so not the number of applications he sent in a day or not a number of rejections he would get, but I asked him a very simple question. How many interviews have you had in the past 6 months? Turns out he only had one interview out of more than 80 applications sent. I'm sure that if any of you have been job searching for a while, you could relate to this situation. I mean, hey, we've all been there. Rejection sucks. It is part of the process. But after a certain period of time, you start realizing that, there has to be an end somewhere at some point. So where is that turning point where you realize, okay, I need to start changing something? Because if I'm doing the exact same thing and expecting the exact same results, as they say, it's the definition of craziness. Also, George shared with me that, he wasn't super excited about LinkedIn because he would get close to zero response from people on LinkedIn. Like I told you before, he would message recruiters every once in a while. For whatever reason, ghosting was part of the reality. So nobody truly got back to George with anything tangible or anything that he could really hold on to. And at the end of the day, he was obviously very frustrated and disappointed with such poor performance and such poor results. And he thought that his resume is the problem because, well, at the end of the day, his LinkedIn profile is pretty much the copy of his resume. So he was hoping that the strength of his experience, of his qualifications, of his background and his skill set will pretty much speak for itself and help him get noticed. Well, as you can tell by now, it didn't. So George and I embarked on an exciting journey of trying to help him understand that LinkedIn needs to become the center of his job search strategy. But just like many of you who are maybe only starting to get to know LinkedIn, or maybe you're like me, you're spending a certain amount of time on LinkedIn every single day, you still have questions. So I'm just going to walk you through the exact questions that George asked me, and I'm sure that you can relate to some of them. So we're going to walk through each and every one of them and hopefully get that stuff cleared once and for all. So the main question, or the first important question that George and literally every client that I've spoken with in the past year or so has asked me is, okay, so you're the lady who talks about LinkedIn. Is it actually worth it? Like, is it really as effective and as productive as you're telling people it is? Can I really gain something out of it in terms of getting interviews, getting some real job leads, getting even hired and getting job offers? So I really wanted to help George understand how much opportunity LinkedIn offers. So I went ahead and did some digging for some numbers. And what I found out is that certain studies, and there were a number of them from different sources, but basically, if we could summarize the key takeaways, they were the following. Over 120 million people received an interview through LinkedIn. And these are the stats that LinkedIn keeps track of every once in a while because they're doing those surveys. And if you've ever seen, LinkedIn might ask you some questions And you might just click a few buttons and let LinkedIn know how much value you're getting out of the platform. More than 35 million people were hired by a person they connected with. So basically, if you juggle those numbers around and divide that by number of members and all that stuff, you would get something like this. 3 people are hired through LinkedIn every minute. Obviously, these are the stats for the entire world. So wherever you are, that may not be exactly that number in your region or in your country. But imagine 3 people every minute. Who said that you cannot be one of those 3 people? Who said that you cannot be one of those 122 million who received an interview through LinkedIn? If they could, why can't you? Also, LinkedIn happens to be the go-to place for recruiters when they are looking for candidates and vetting candidates and assessing their profiles, which means that anywhere between 70 to 87% of recruiters, again, based on a couple different studies, I'm not going to bore you with those numbers, just the main takeaway, the majority of recruiters use LinkedIn every day to source candidates. And the reality of today's job search is, it's overwhelming because imagine if you are the person hiring, or if you've ever done, if you ever had to hire people or look for candidates, I'm sure that you would understand. Imagine that you're sitting there looking for the right fit for a certain opportunity, and then you get flooded with hundreds, if not thousands, of incoming resumes, and only like roughly half of them, best case scenario, are even relevant. Who in the world has the time to sort through all of those incoming resumes? Which is why recruiters much rather prefer to go onto LinkedIn, type in certain targeted keywords, and start looking for people who are guaranteed to be a good match, and then start having conversations with those people. Another fun number for you to know, because obviously we cannot not mention the pandemic today, because that is something that has changed not only the landscape of the job market, the economies, but also the landscape of LinkedIn as well. So during the period between March and December 2020, which was the hot period for the pandemic in North America at least, the number of remote job postings added onto LinkedIn in the US alone has grown 6 times. So again, anybody who has ever told you that there are no jobs or there are no postings that are interesting and exciting, I'm sorry, the numbers don't lie. The growth is there, which means the opportunity is there. So now that we cleared that up, if so many people managed to use LinkedIn to progress in their job search or to progress in their careers, so can you. The next question that George asked me was, okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you. Now I have more faith in LinkedIn, but I still don't quite understand. I thought the main problem is my resume. Isn't it the same as my LinkedIn profile? Because initially that's what I came for you to update my resume. And then I would simply take LinkedIn as the next step and just match whatever I had on my resume. Isn't it the same thing, basically? The answer is absolutely not. If you're someone who is still thinking that, LinkedIn is basically the copy of your resume just hosted online on this weird platform with the blue logo at the top, that has already, those times are already gone a long time ago. Today, the defensive or the conservative LinkedIn approach, which is essentially simply copying your resume onto your LinkedIn profile and hoping for the best, those days are gone. These days, you need to go way above the basics, way above that conservative mode to be able to generate opportunities. And remember, LinkedIn is no longer a job search platform. It's a social platform. And to be fair, I've watched LinkedIn do so much to transform this platform from the boring job search board it used to be to the fun, educational, and super value-packed platform that it has become today. I mean, don't get me wrong, LinkedIn does not pay me to endorse them, unfortunately. Maybe they should. But obviously, there are some pros and cons. I'm not saying that LinkedIn is perfect, but it is definitely a lot more social than it used to be, which means that it's time for you to keep up with that change, keep up with that trend, and to really understand how to behave, how to be present on LinkedIn, how to position yourself so that you can cut through all the noise of all those other people who are present on LinkedIn as well. Which brings us to the next logical question George had for me, which is a good one. He said, okay, great. You just mentioned that there are a lot of people that I have to compete with. So thousands of people potentially with similar or even better qualifications than mine. Do I really stand a chance? Like, can I really stand out from all that crowd? Is it even realistic? Because I don't think that I'm any better than those thousands of other people. If you are in that same boat, if every once in a while you might be doubting yourself, you might be doubting your level of skills, your level of qualifications, the level of compellingness there is to what you can offer, I want you to remember this phrase and repeat it to yourself every single day when you wake up in the morning, before you go to bed at night, or any other time that you wish. Someone out there is looking for exactly what you have to offer. Trust me, I know, because I work with so many different people in different industries, completely different backgrounds, various career levels, anywhere between entry level to, you know, top C-suite executives, CEOs, CFOs, and people of that level as well. And, you know, at any level, people have very similar doubts and very similar questions. That's the most fascinating part. No matter how good you get at what you do, there will always happen to be someone who is a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit more experienced, worked for a little bit of a more of a bigger brand or something that is more well known and understood by others. But that does not mean that there are no right opportunities where you would be valued, where you would feel great, where you would be excited, and where you would be compensated for what you're truly worth. So remember, someone out there is looking for exactly what you have to offer. Now, the challenge becomes, how do they find you? And that's the main pitfall that a lot of, or the main trap that a lot of job seekers fall into. They believe that, okay, so once I have my resume up on LinkedIn, people will just find me because, like George told me as well, I'm confident that my experience is fairly good. It should, you know, get me noticed. It should speak for itself. I don't need to brag. Again, the reality of the digital job search is a lot noisier than it used to be 10 or even 5 years ago, which means that now it's up to you to not only know how to position yourself, how to talk about what you have to offer, but also now the part about helping other people find you is also on you. The easier you make it for other people to find you, the more likely you are to get the result that you want from LinkedIn or any other platform for that matter. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Remember, not only how to improve your profile, which was our number one focus, but also how to distribute that profile. What I mean by distribute is how to get the most eyeballs. That's one. Eyeballs, you know, you can call it views, you can call it search appearances, any of the above. And then how to convert that into opportunities. So all of that together gives you the formula that you truly need to be able to leverage LinkedIn to your biggest advantage. So at this point, George was really excited. He told me, okay, Anna, let's do this. You convinced me. LinkedIn is my go-to, not the resume anymore. And now I understand that LinkedIn really should be the center of my strategy. So what do I need to do to get my profile to show up higher in those search results? Because I imagine recruiters can find hundreds, if not thousands, of profiles. I kind of hope to be on page one, somewhere at the top. How can I do that? That is a very, very interesting question. So now this is where we come to the point of talking about how you can rank higher in LinkedIn search results. The most trivial and kind of something that sounds very simple but is not easy is adding targeted keywords for context. What does that mean? That a lot of the times certain things are called a certain way, let's say a job title or a project or anything, you know, anything else in the work that you do. But for other people who are outside of your organization, outside of your scope, it might be called something different. So in order for the other person who doesn't know you, who has no idea where you've been and what you've done and why you're better than everybody else, they need to understand what you can do. They need to understand it in a way that makes it 100% crystal clear. That's why you need context. Just to give you a couple of very simple examples so that you understand what I'm talking about. If you have ever, done a search on LinkedIn or looked up other people on LinkedIn, you might have seen either in their headline or down in the experience section, you could see the job title and the company name, right? So in the headline, a lot of people have their job title at company name. That's it. So it could look something like project manager at ABC company. Really, what does that tell you if you have never worked for the ABC company and maybe you've never been a project manager? Tells you nothing. Doesn't tell you what makes this project manager unique. It doesn't tell you what is the scope of this person's responsibility. It doesn't tell you what this person has focused on for the past 10, 5, 3, or 1 year. So it's important to add targeted keywords to make sure that there is context. There is a very simple way to do that. When you're looking for different job postings that you might be interested in, take note of those things that are mentioned in terms of the requirements for the job, or also when you're reading the overall description of what the job is about, look for those common denominators that different job postings might have. So if you're a project manager at ABC company, maybe you could specify what kind of project manager. So it could look something like project manager global SaaS implementation. This way, people all of a sudden people understand, he or she has worked on a global scale, which is great. Working internationally across borders, across countries is completely different from working for a small business locally who only operates in a certain city or in a certain state, or maybe even in a certain country. Those are very different scopes, very different budgets, very different leadership skills. So that's one thing. After that, it's clear that the person is, has great experience with SaaS implementation. So again, for recruiters, that gives them that necessary context. Because trust me, I network with recruiters every day. I used to recruit people. No recruiter ever just types a formal job title as general as project manager and leaves it at that. There are always other relevant industry or profession relevant keywords that matter for the context of what kind of project manager you're looking for. Another example, data analyst. Again, instead of simply saying data analyst, like how many kinds of data analysts are out there? So many. Being a data analyst in a startup and being a data analyst for Facebook are two very different things. So what kind of data analyst are you? What kind of tools are you proficient in, or what kind of softwares do you specialize in? So those are the things that you might need to include when it comes to a profession like data analyst. So your title, whether it be a headline or the job title down in the experience section, could sound something like this: data analyst, Power BI and SQL, which are your technical skills, the softwares that you're using all the time that you specialize in. And then business intelligence, which happens to be one of the most popular terms to talk about data analytics and financial analytics, and in general, that idea of working with data to help improve business performance. So that's why targeted keywords are so important. They are important not only because that's what recruiters like, but also because that's how the LinkedIn algorithm understands when to show your profile. So if you think about it, what is the LinkedIn algorithm? A lot of people get confused when I say algorithm. Essentially, think of it as a robot who is on the other side of LinkedIn watching you and thinking, okay, how can I help George to be found? What are some of the things that he might be a good candidate for? So if George only says that he's a project manager, the robot is confused. The robot is thinking, I don't quite understand. What kind of project manager? Should I show George in this search or in this search? Should I show George more for this recruiter or for this person? So help the robot understand what kind of profession or what kind of industry you are by adding that context with the help of targeted keywords. Another thing that the robot wants you to specify is location. That is something that you can tailor. A lot of people simply use the default option of the location where they're at. But then let's say you decide to move. What do you do then? Because if let's say you're in New York, but you know that in 2 months you're moving to Chicago, and obviously you're looking for a job that hopefully is not in New York anymore. But when you have New York set as your default location on LinkedIn, how should the recruiters who are recruiting for Chicago-based roles understand that you're open to moving. They will never understand. So it's, it's essential for you to show the location where you want to be if you're someone who intends to move in the near future and you know exactly where you're going. Luckily, there is a very convenient section right below the very top of your profile where you have your profile picture, then you have the headline, and then there's this little open to work section. There you can tailor your settings and you can make that visible either to everybody, in which case you get that little green banner and you're on your profile picture, or you can make it visible to recruiters only. And in that case, you can choose, up to five different locations where you are open to opportunities. So that gives the recruiters a much better idea, and that helps you to show up in the searches that recruiters do when they narrow down the location of the candidates. Another factor that has a pretty significant influence on how well you rank in the search results on LinkedIn is how many shared connections we have. So if I'm looking for a project manager with SaaS implementation, chances are that the people who have more connections in common with me are going to show up higher in my search results than people who don't. What's the takeaway from this? It's important for you to strategically grow your network, not randomly, not sporadically, but strategically. Think about the kinds of people or the kinds of companies that you want to be connected with, and then search for people who are either 2 steps ahead of you in your profession or a couple steps behind. So that way you can facilitate and grow your network, enrich it with people who are relevant, who are in the same world, who understand what you do, and with whom you can have some meaningful interactions. And finally, there's another factor that gets omitted a lot, unfortunately, but still plays a pretty important role: your activity. LinkedIn does not openly publish any information saying, if you are more active, we're going to show you in more search results. But after I've done some experimenting and a lot of trial and error, that's what I found. The more active the profile or the user, the owner of the profile is, they get rewarded for that level of activity. That comes along with LinkedIn's recent mission to become more social. So not unlike any other social media platform, Instagram does the same thing. Facebook, which is basically Instagram, they're the same. All of them reward people who spend time on that platform, and the main goal is to get those people to spend even more time. So if you engage, and by engage, I mean like the content that you see, comment on other people's content, connect with people, message people, regularly maintain your profile and make some tweaks and updates, the robot on the other side will see, aha, this user is active. Let me help them be found. That is how it works. So those 4 factors are the main. Obviously, they're not the only ones, and LinkedIn never truly discloses the full range of factors that the algorithm or the robot takes into account, but these definitely happen to be the 4 most important ones. So the next question George asked me was, okay, now that I understand a little bit more about how I can work with the LinkedIn robot, which sections of my profile are most important for recruiters? What do they pay attention to? And that is a great question, because at the end of the day, if you want to be found, you have to balance these 2 elements. You have to balance how the algorithm understands what you're doing, right? And how the algorithm is helping you on the other side. But you also need to understand a little bit about how people think on LinkedIn. And here are, and this actually goes along with our third focus of the presentation. Remember, how to improve your profile was first. Second was how to rank higher in search results, or how to show up more often in search results. So now we're diving more into the area of how to convert those views which you get from your search performance into real opportunities. What do you need? And this is where the human element becomes extremely, extremely important. Having a professional photo. I know, the most obvious thing ever, but it works. It's your first impression, and whether we like it or not, the majority of people are visual. I'm visual, chances are so are you. We love things that look good, that look well taken care of, that look polished and professional. And studies show that if you include a good-looking professional photo, you actually might get up to 14 times more profile views. Just to clarify, when I say professional photo, I don't mean that you have to hire a super expensive photographer in your city and spend couple thousands of bucks on getting headshots. By professional, I mean high resolution, good lighting, you having a professional appearance that reflects your personality, that reflects your brand, that reflects that perception that you want to get across to other people who might be looking at your profile. Then we are moving down to your headline, which goes right below your profile photo. In there, you have 220 characters. So please, please do not waste that space for something as boring and mundane as job title at company name. Like I said, even if, if not for the creativity's sake, it's just not enough information for your headline. So within those 220 characters, you can include some context, so keywords. Remember, you can include some company names, which is why sometimes you might come across profiles where it says something like X Google or X Uber. So people are showing these are the types of brands I used to work for. You can include some information about signature accomplishments. Even if you're even more creative than that, you can take it up a notch and include more of a marketing slogan, more of a value proposition. I'm sure that you've seen a few of those that start with, I help someone do something. So that's a little bit more advanced, but still it is something that gives personality to your profile. It helps your profile to stand out. Job titles. Again, the only thing that I'm going to say here, targeted keywords, make sure that there is context. So the title that you have, the job title that you have on LinkedIn in the experience section, it's not a resume, so it doesn't have to just stick with the legal name that you had in your employment contract. If your actual job was a little bit bigger or greater than what you initially signed up for, let recruiters know. Let them know that you've also done other things on top of the minimum legal thing that you were tasked with. Also, sometimes the same jobs can be named slightly different ways. So you might want to capture a couple of those. For example, data architects sometimes are called data engineers. Maybe it's not the same thing, but a lot of the times these terms are interchangeable. So make sure that you include both so that if recruiters are searching for one or the other, your profile still has a chance to show up. Now, after the experience section, we're going down to skills and endorsements. And in there, the top 3 pinned skills that you have are always visible to everybody. And you want to make sure that those are the most relevant and the most crucial to your profile, something that truly reflects the core of the work that you do. Also, make sure that the skills section, that is especially relevant actually if you are transitioning careers, jobs, companies, whatever. The skills section needs to be tailored towards the job you want, not the job you have. So if you're an accountant trying to switch into sales, but your skills section is populated with accounting and finance related skills, something's up. You might want to include more sales related or business development oriented skills. Obviously, timelines. Recruiters do pay attention to timelines, how much time you spend working for this company, working for that company. So make sure that those are coherent, clear, and have enough information, because sometimes people have short-term gigs. And if you worked in one place for 3 months only, you can include some context to mention that that was a 3 months contract or a 3 months project. That way, nobody ever has any concerns about, hey, why did you switch so quickly? Another thing that truly attracts recruiters are measurable results. So that is something that is relevant not only for your LinkedIn profile, but also for your resume, actually. What you delivered, so what you were able to produce and how you were able to perform is not the same as the task that you had on hand. Those are 2 different things. I might be interviewing people or coaching people to interview, or I might be helping 10 people every day to get job offers within 2 weeks. Those are 2 very, very different things. And last but not least, recommendations. So obviously, a lot of these things are subjective. So some recruiters pay more attention to certain things, some other recruiters pay more attention to other things. But if we could find some common ground, I would say that social proof works. How often do you read customer reviews when you're purchasing something off of Amazon? I'm pretty sure that you do it, if not every time, every second time for sure, which means that if recruiters want to buy into your skill set, your experience, they're going to want to see some social proof. So recommendations, the most underrated section of your LinkedIn profile. Now, that's all great. And once George and I went through all of this stuff, he had a much better understanding of how to optimize his profile and how to make it work and how to get the most out of what he has in his profile. Now the question is, once he's optimized his profile, is it enough to see a difference? So a lot of the times people I work with ask me, so now that I've updated my profile, when can I expect to get some real results? And they get so excited, like I can give a specific timeline. So guys, that's another common misconception that exists. And I hope that we can demystify or dispel this forever and ever. And you're gonna walk away today understanding exactly how this works. Even if you have the best written profile in the world, it's not enough for people to pay attention to it. It's not because what you have to offer isn't important enough or isn't valuable enough. It's because the space we're in today, with the competition we have, with the economy we have and everything, it's too crowded, it's too noisy. So if you're hoping that you can optimize your profile and then just sit back, relax, and wait for inbound leads to flood in, by inbound, I mean incoming, so people reaching out to you, hopefully they will. But you will never truly maximize the whole potential that LinkedIn has to offer. So avoiding outreach forever really isn't sustainable, especially if you're only getting started. So if your LinkedIn profile has been underutilized, a little bit stale for a while, and you need to get that initial traction going, simply relying on the inbound things to happen is definitely not enough. The common thing that people tell me here is, well, I understand, but I'm an introvert and that's definitely outside of my comfort zone. So it's so uncomfortable for me to start messaging strangers and start telling them things and then face their unresponsiveness and be ghosted all the time. Well, hello everybody. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Anna and I'm an introvert. So I get it. It's not easy and I never said it is. But the good thing that I've learned over the years that I really want you to remember is that if networking is inevitable, which it is, LinkedIn is the absolute best place to start. It is the most introvert-friendly or professional-friendly platform out there. There's a lot less shaming, there's a lot less bullying and all that other stuff. It is still there, and people are people, and there are people everywhere, they're human, but it's a lot more professional and it's a lot more value oriented than any other platforms. So if you're scared to get started, or if you've been wanting to get started for a while and having doubts, trust me on this. LinkedIn is a great place to start, even if you start with a few baby steps. And if you are looking for those baby steps, let me remind you of a few very simple things. First of all, recruiters' time is valuable. And I know that this sounds very obvious and you're probably saying, well, duh, but as a former recruiter myself, and a lot of my friends are recruiters, I know how few candidates actually make it feel that way. Recruiters don't work for you, they work for the client, for the company that is hiring, which means that they're not gonna wake up at night thinking, oh my God, I need to help George. What can I do to help George accomplish what he wants? That is not going to happen. So it's your job to get in touch. It's your job to push, and I mean push in a good way, not in a creepy and annoying way. Also, if you're only staying within that comfortable friends and family circle, you are missing out on adding weaker ties to your network. Weaker ties are those people that you know a little bit more vaguely, so you don't really know them that well, but they still have an idea of what you've been up to. Those actually studies have shown, I didn't invent this, studies have shown that the weaker ties are the #1 generator for quality leads and referrals for job opportunities. So if you're someone who is thinking, I've got my friends and that's all I need, friends are not going to help you get very far. You can still love them and cherish them and spend time with them, but getting a job is different. And finally, the most simple yet mysteriously unknown thing is personalizing your messages, your invitations, and really personalizing every interaction. Every day I get hundreds and hundreds of templated messages, and every time I get one, I know that it was a template. And I'm not, so proud to think that people are sitting there and reading a lot about me and dedicating half of the day to write me a customized message. I know everybody's busy. I'm not, delusional. But at the end of the day, I want to understand that the person is reaching out to me for a reason, that they know at least something about me that makes our interaction meaningful. So remember that anytime that you are messaging recruiters or recruiters are messaging you, it goes such a long way. It's such a simple thing, personalizing and valuing the other person's time. But those are the things that you cannot fake. They're either there or they aren't. And I think I want to finish off with one big takeaway. We live in a world, I guess, where people are always looking for shortcuts, for hacks, for tricks, for tips, 5 tips to get this, 10 tips to get that. And I get it. You're busy. You want to get the most results in the minimum amount of time possible. But here's the truth. Shortcuts to quality job and career opportunities, like we're talking real good stuff, shortcuts do not exist. And that does not mean, though, that you have to line up in the traffic jam where everybody's banging their heads against the walls of doing the same thing and expecting different results. Like, for example, sending your resumes online without doing anything else outside of that. There are ways around that, and there are ways that you can add to complement your strategy to make it more diversified. But shortcuts, they are not shortcuts. They are add-ons. They are ways around things, but they will not give you quick result easy. Quick result does not happen. So if you're someone who is getting started on LinkedIn specifically, and if you truly believe that there's a lot of potential, but you feel overwhelmed and you're so eager to get maximum result in the minimum amount of time, don't get discouraged if the result doesn't come right away, but it still will. I can guarantee you, if you put your mind to it, the result will come. I know that a lot of you, or hopefully all of you, will get a copy of these slides after the entire series. So I've included a couple of videos from my YouTube channel where I'm covering a couple other things that might be helpful. For example, I have a video which happens to be the most popular and most viewed video on my YouTube, where I'm reviewing real people's LinkedIn profile with their consent, obviously. And I'm sharing my feedback in terms of the things those people are doing wrong and what they can do better. So I think that if you're someone who's saying, okay, time to really nail my profile, this could be a really good place to start. So this is everything that I wanted to cover with you today, guys. Thank you so much for being here, for participating, for listening, and for staying till the very end. I truly appreciate it. For every single one of you, don't be a stranger. Let's connect. Let's get in touch. On the slide, you can see a couple of ways how you could get in touch with me if you wanted to. Obviously, LinkedIn, you're always welcome. I spend so much time on there, it's crazy. If not, you can also find my website and my email address. So please reach out to me and let's connect, and I'll be happy to have you as part of my network on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, and I'm excited for some good questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. That was really great. We got a lot of great questions in here, so we'll just dive straight into it.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you want me to stop sharing the screen? Sorry, John.
Nope, that's okay. That's okay. You can leave that there. Yeah, so Abdul asked, how do you find recruiters on LinkedIn for specific fields?
That's a great question. So definitely you want to do some research prior to looking for recruiters specifically on LinkedIn. And you might want to check out the different recruiting agencies or recruiting firms out there, because certain firms specialize in specific industries. So you can do a simple Google search. It might take you a few minutes, but you might get a pretty good idea. So if you find a profile of a recruiter where they don't openly indicate the kind of industries or the kinds of professions that they work with, which would be rare, but that might happen, at least you will see the name of the company that they work with. You can always click on the LinkedIn profile, or sorry, the LinkedIn company page of that company. You can see some info on there. If not, just Google search and see what that firm specializes in. I think that would be a good first step.
Awesome. Well, we'll stick with the theme of recruiters a little bit here. You mentioned this a little bit in your presentation, but Barbara asked, how's the pandemic impacted how job seekers and recruiters use LinkedIn? And what action should job seekers take as a result of this? So what has changed on LinkedIn as a result of the pandemic? And is there any behaviors that job seekers should change?
That's a great question, Barbara. Thank you. The number one thing that has changed is that finally a lot more job seekers realize that if they're not online, they are nowhere. So they have to be more mindful and more careful about their online presence and really start using LinkedIn. So that is a good thing on one hand, but on the other hand, it means greater competition. So think more noise, more profiles, more people, meaning that more effort to stand out. So in terms of the action that you can take, I think the number one thing is personalizing those interactions. And I don't simply mean, tailoring those templates so they don't look like templates in the messages. I also mean that if, let's say, you find someone who you want to reach out to, but you don't really know what to tell them, right? Like they are a complete stranger and you don't know how to start that conversation. Go onto their profile, scroll down to their activity section, and look at the content that they are engaging with. So the stuff they're liking, the stuff they're commenting on, or even the stuff that they are publishing and posting themselves. Use that as a foundation to warm up that conversation first. So interact in those comments or in under their posts, and then take it to direct messages. Because if there are more job seekers on LinkedIn and recruiters are spending more time on LinkedIn as well, that means that they are flooded with messages. So if you simply are one of the 100 people who send them a message today or yesterday, chances are your message may not stand out. But if you first interact with the recruiter elsewhere under the stuff that they are posting, sometimes recruiters share job opportunities. So they're posting, hey, we're hiring for this and this. Sometimes they're engaging with something or they're delivering talks or whatever else. So take note of that and use it to build that interaction from there. That foundation will help you to build a more meaningful relationship. And like I said, that personalization, that idea of you truly appreciating and valuing their time and the other person's time, whoever that person may be, that goes such a long way.
Awesome. And, related to the increase in remote work and people going to LinkedIn to find that remote work, Patrick asks, if you're applying for remote jobs, is it okay to set your location to just USA, or should you pick a location?
That's a good question, because on the other hand, if you set it simply to USA, how does the robot, right, the algorithm, understand when to show your profile? So if you're someone who has a very, like, your skill set is really in demand, then your location might not matter as much. But if recruiters are still localizing their search for whatever reason, you might be missing out on those opportunities. So what you could do is you could still narrow down the area. So not like country, but like not country level, like USA or Canada, but put the state or the area where you're in. But then in your open to work settings, you can put that you're open to remote opportunities. Or also throughout your profile, if the recruiter is looking at it and they can see that you've already done remote positions before, that also alleviates any concerns that they might have in terms of, oh, is this person truly open to remote positions? Because I think, let's face it, we are living in the reality where most people, even if they weren't open to remote opportunities, now they are. So I would start that way and just test it out, because like I said, a lot of this stuff, it does take a little bit of trial and error. You can try both. My only tip here would be try it for a little bit, like give it some time, because those results, they don't pick up in a matter of 2 or 3 days. They pick up in a matter of weeks. So you can leave one location for a certain period of time, see how that performs. If you're seeing that nothing is happening after a few weeks, try to change it, right? Your profile is not set in stone. It's a living and breathing thing. So it's okay to experiment. You can try one way, then try another way and see which one works better for you. Because unfortunately, as much as I'd love to give you a universal solution here or universal recipe. I don't believe that one like that exists. It depends a lot on your specific situation.
Great answer. We have a few comments in here about the little green open to work symbol that you could add to your profile, Ruth and others. Just generally, if you have any thoughts on that, if it's a bad thing, a good thing, personally as a hiring manager, I can't imagine that ever influencing my decision one way or the other, but do you have any opinions on that from the LinkedIn side?
Sure, that's I think a while ago when those banners just appeared, it was a very hot topic in the recruiter / career people community. I'm like you, John. I think if I were the hiring manager, that would not be a major deciding factor. But with that in mind, I also know that for a lot of recruiters that I'm in touch with and a lot of recruiters that I've spoken to throughout the years, I know that there is this thing, and it's a very subjective thing. So don't take this again as a one size fits all universal solution here. I know that recruiters want candidates who do not seem to be super actively and desperately looking. So if having that open to work banner in any way reflects that, I think that might be a negative thing. So I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, but if I had to choose, I would go for not having the banner, so not making it visible to everybody and only limiting it to recruiters, which still allows people who are using LinkedIn Recruiter to find you, but you don't have that banner that is visible to everybody on LinkedIn. But again, super subjective thing. Like if you spend some time even Googling this or reading opinions on LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of people who disagree and their points are also valid. So I'm not saying that this is, like I said, it's very, very subjective.
Great. Well, we're just about up with our time now. I just want to thank Anna really quickly for spending time with us, sharing her expertise. This was a really great presentation. And also don't forget to check out Jobscan Premium. You see the link there on the slide, jobscan.co/promo/no-fear. Get 20% off there. And check out our other webinars at jobscan.co/no-fear. Anna, if you have a few extra moments, we could speed round through some more questions, but otherwise, I think that's just about it for us.
Well, thank you for having me. I do have a few minutes for some more questions, so let's go through a couple if you don't mind.
All right, let's speed round it. And everyone else, if you got to go, thanks for coming. And otherwise, let's dive into some more questions. Mike asked, what are the targeted keywords that you mentioned? Is that in the job title, under your name, in the about summary? Where are those targeted keywords coming in?
That's a great question. So ideally, you want to have that everywhere. So there are some sections of your profile that are indexed a little bit higher than others. So in simple terms, it means that in certain places, those keywords are a little bit more important than everywhere else. And usually those places are the job titles, so the titles that you had in the past, and your profile headline. Again, there is no official data saying that that's the case for everybody. Here are some numbers supporting it, but I think it happens to be the case just through some experimentation and trial and error. Ideally, you do want to have those keywords spread out. Also in the about section, if you have some descriptions of the roles that you've done, the accomplishments and stuff, mixing those targeted keywords in with the results, right? So going back to the point of including some measurable outcomes, deliverables that make your profile a lot more attractive and appealing, that also helps. So blending that in, which is a little bit of an art, it's not something that is the beginner level of writing about yourself. So it takes some practice. Ideally blend it in everywhere, but if you're thinking what's the first place, headline and job titles.
Awesome, I agree. And Robin mentions that many people have had to take a step back during the pandemic in order to care for family members, or really just deal with everything that was going on, or layoffs, or whatever it is. Any advice on how to best frame these unusual situations on their LinkedIn profiles if they had to take time off for the pandemic or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a tricky thing, because on the one hand, if you're having a big gap and you're not saying anything about it, that might be suspicious, right? But on the other hand, your LinkedIn profile does not really have that special section where you could say, and this is the time when I was, doing some, taking care of my health, for example. So like I said before, your LinkedIn profile is not exactly your resume. It's not your resume at all anymore. It definitely has some similarities, don't get me wrong, but it's not a word for word copy. So I would definitely cover that very directly on your resume. On your LinkedIn profile, you can use the about section. That's why I think refreshing your about section every once in a while is important, because your circumstances might change. The world might change. You see, we had the pandemic, we might have something else, good or bad or whatever. So that affects your narrative, that affects your skill set even. So I would say I would use the about section maybe to mention that. But again, that should never be the center of how you're talking about yourself, because yes, it is a concern for someone, right? So there might be recruiters who might have questions like, hey, I don't see what you've been up to between May and December 2020. But the question is, can they first reach out to you to ask that question, and then you can clarify? So instead of getting too hung up on how can I tell them exactly what I was doing in all the dates that are possible, focus more on making your profile so compelling, so relevant, that I, as a recruiter, if I come across it, I will want to reach out and ask you. And then it's a lot easier to handle than, trying to cover all bases with just one LinkedIn profile, but at the end of the day, a little bit maybe damaging the entire impression that your profile makes.
Excellent. Speaking of making your profile shine, Hugo asks, do you recommend including media that showcases your work? Do recruiters actually look at that?
They might. Obviously, I cannot, read their minds. I cannot tell you for sure if every single recruiter opens up that media. Personally, when I look at people's profiles, I think like having those media attachments gives it a visual punch. Whether I check it out or not is, step two. And hopefully, if I'm someone who is really vetting candidates, I would. But at the end of the day, it makes your profile more complete, and it shows that you care. I think that's the most important thing here. So obviously, I'm not saying just include something there for the sake of including, because no, then don't include anything if you don't have anything of quality to include. But I think it's the visual that counts first. And then if, once the person reaches out to you and you're having that conversation, you can refer them to those attachments. You can say, hey, it's funny that you asked me about this, because actually on my profile, there is an attachment here and there talking about this. So that way, even if they haven't checked it out yet, you make sure to get it to their attention. And I think that would be kind of a great softer approach than really expecting everybody to spend time checking out every single media attachment.
Great. And have just a couple minutes before 10 past. I think we'll cut it off there. Greg asks about changing careers, and I'll just mention briefly that later on in this series we have a great presentation from the very respected Hannah Morgan on this topic on changing careers, so be sure to check that out. But Greg asks, what recommendations do you have for someone changing career fields entirely when past job titles do not support the future career goals?
Yeah, career change can be tricky in that regard. So I would say, first of all, the job titles are not always set in stone. So you can have a job title, but then you can add more of the functional areas of expertise that you've been focusing on that are more relevant for, or let's say not relevant, but also transferable to this new area. So for example, if you've done, some kind of an outreach, right? And it could be like outreach is a transferable thing. You do it in sales, you do it in project management when you're managing and engaging stakeholders, you do it in marketing and PR, you do it in fundraising, you do it in so many different areas. So it's okay to add those functional areas to your job titles. That's the one thing that I could say. Same goes for the about section and the job, like the descriptions of the roles. So if you're transitioning, I would say there is more focus on the descriptions of your roles, because then you can spend those characters talking about those transferable elements. So again, kind of making sure that your profile doesn't only speak to this is what I've done in the past, this is what I've been good at, but talking about that future transition, why what you already have done has prepared you well for this new opportunity. And also going back to my point about skills and endorsement. So don't only include skills for the jobs you've had, include skills for the job you want. And a lot of people have some issues with that, saying, well, if I didn't do business development for 10 years, how can I include this in my skills and endorsement? Well, guess what? If you've done outreach, if you've done work with people where you were managing processes to get some growth, whatever that looked like, that in essence is business development. Maybe it's not exactly the same kind, but it's okay to include some of those keywords, at least not to miss out on showing up in some of those recruiters' searches.
Excellent. And Anna, we have a request if you could put up your contact information again as we wrap this up. Thank you everyone for attending with us, Jobscan's second annual No Fear Job Search webinar series. This was a great presentation. We just want to thank Anna one more time for coming out and spending some time with us and going a little overtime. You had a lot of great questions here. I'm sorry that we only got to a small fraction of them, but keep an eye on your emails. We'll send out the slides. We'll send out the video once it's ready. And yeah, thanks again. Any last words, Anna?
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for having me. And it's been wonderful. And I've enjoyed this series last year. And I think we should all thank John, Linda, and the rest of the Jobscan team for all the work that has been put into this. So please, guys, if you're still watching, say something nice in the comments so that so because it takes a lot of organizing behind the scenes, and I know that it's not easy. So thank you guys for making these events so great, second year in a row.
All right, thanks so much, everyone. We'll leave this contact information up for a couple minutes, and we'll catch you in the next session.